Right, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 25th of November 2020 meeting of the Climate Change Steering Group. My name is Councillor Catherine Field. I'm chair of the Climate Change Steering Group, and this meeting is being held remotely, is being live streamed via YouTube, and the recording of it will be available afterwards on our website. I'm getting a lot of feedback. I'll read the rest out, although I'm sure most of you know it off by heart. Councillors and officers are reminded to put their mobile phone on silent if they have one near them, leave their cameras on, steering group members only, and mute their microphones when not speaking, as this will reduce feedback and background noise, and it saves bandwidth to prevent loss of connection. I'll first do a roll call to check all the members who are expected to attend are present. As I say your name, please turn on your microphone and confirm you are connected. So, members of the Climate Change Steering Group, this is for you. Councillor Coleman.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Gray.
Present.
Councillor Hart. Haven't heard. Councillor Langlands.
Present.
Councillor Osborne.
Present.
Councillor Prochak.
Present.
Right, thank you very much. And other members joining us today that I have a note of are Councillor Jeanette Stevens, but I do see others. I see Councillor Norton. Anybody else?
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. And Councillor Oliver, I believe.
Councillor Paul Cortell.
Thank you.
Councillor Hazel Tempe.
Thank you.
Councillor Madeley.
Any more? Right, thank you. Also present are Sue Burton from the 1066 Cycling Club, Jason Lavender, High Weald Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty Unit, Dominic Manning from Rother Environmental Group, David Pankhurst, Rother Association of Local Councils, Richard Watson, Energise Sussex Coast. Officers joining us today are Malcolm Johnson, the Chief Executive, Ben Hook, Head of Service Acquisitions, Transformation and Regeneration, Joe Powell, Head of Service Housing and Community, Richard Parker Harding, Head of Environmental Services, Licensing and Community Safety, Tim Hickling, Head of Service Strategy and Planning, Dr. Christina Sodomkova, Environment and Policy Manager, and Nicola Waters, Planning Policy Manager. The Democratic Services Officer, who is the committee clerk today, is Julie Hollands. Members of the steering group will be making the decisions today by named vote. Those members who wish to speak, please indicate by typing your surname only in the chat facility. Could I remind you, as far as the chat facility goes, that anything written in there stays there in perpetuity. So please only use it for indicating that you wish to speak. Thank you. I think we can now, after all that, start on the agenda. Right. Item 1 is apologies for absence. I don't think we have any, have we? Oh, yes, we might have Councillor Hart.
Oh, Councillor Hart hasn't contacted us, so I can't officially give her apologies. Right. So no, we've not received any.
Right, thank you. Item 2 is disclosure of interests. This is to receive any disclosure by members of personal and disclosable pecuniary interests in matters on the agenda, the nature of any interest, and whether the member regards the personal interest as prejudicial under the terms of the Code of Conduct. Members are reminded of the need to repeat their declaration immediately prior to the commencement of the item in question. Anybody got any interests? No.
Yes.
Councillor Gray.
I am a member of Bexhill Environmental Group, who are mentioned later in the report.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Cortell.
I make a small monthly donation to Greenpeace, which might just be relevant, but it's a non-pecuniary interest.
Thank you. I'm sure that's fine. Councillor Langlands.
A member of the Bexhill Environmental Group.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes,
No.
I'm a member of Reg, Councillor Field. I'm a member of Reg.
Okay.
Sorry, Chairman, I didn't get what Councillor Prochak said then.
Rother Environmental Group.
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Tempe, member of Bexhill Environmental Group.
Right. Thank you. Moving on then to the environment strategy. Christina, Dr. Sodomkova, I think you're going to introduce this, aren't you? You're muted.
Thank you, Councillor Field. I will share my screen. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I will take you through agenda items 3 and 4. The first report is an overview. Well, the report is an overview of the approach that I have been taking since I have been appointed in my role in August this year. And then the second report looks at detail review that I have carried out of one of the grant schemes, with recommendations looking more broadly at other Rother District Council grant schemes.
Thank you. Can I just interrupt you there and say, can we do them separately? Can we do 3 first, and then I'll leave you to introduce 4 when we get there?
Yes, I do have 2 separate presentations.
Thank you. So should we start with 3? Thank you.
Okay. So the first report is to give you an overview of the approach I have been taking. The purpose is to manage expectations and also to set the scene. So bearing in mind, we are at the beginning of the implementation and delivery journey, and the implementation involves change. It's about accommodating new priorities and new demands. So, we have an environment strategy that has been produced as a result of the climate emergency declaration made in September 2019. This led to the environment strategy being produced. The document has been subsequently adopted in September this year, and the finalized document is now available on Rother District Council's website. It's available on a dedicated web page, and the document has a foreword by Councillor Field as the portfolio holder. So this is one of the activities that I have carried out since my appointment in August this year. The environment strategy has a number of priority areas. Within the document, they are listed like this, like shown in this slide. So there is 8 of them. So one of the first tasks I have taken is to look at how these priorities can be categorized to inform an approach for the delivery, because obviously there's 8 of them. So, you know, where do you start? You can't start with all of them at the same time. So what I have found useful as an approach is to look at the different levels of control and influence. So with some of these priority areas, I have a very limited control and influence as well, what I can do. For some of these priority areas, Rother District Council has limited control and influence to some degree. So, for example, transport, Rother District Council is not the transport authority, it's East Sussex County Council. The same would apply to road verges, cutting. Again, it's East Sussex County Council, it's not Rother District Council. So what I have done here, as you go down the list of the priorities, the ones that are bold and increasing in larger font, these are the priority areas where I and Rother District Council, we have more of control and influence, and therefore we are able to take these priority areas forward as part of the delivery. So the priority areas that have been grayed out, like I said, have very limited control or influence. And also, if you consider air quality, good or bad, is an outcome of something else. So you need to look for the root cause of what would be causing good or bad air quality. So like I say, I found this very helpful in terms of categorizing and prioritizing. What is also useful is just to consider the descriptions. So what do we mean by sustainable transport? Well, it's about walking, cycling, but also public transport, rail, electric, and increasingly, we would be looking at hydrogen vehicles. Waste management, there is an increasingly a recognition that often it's a resource that's wasted, and this is reflected in the language used around waste management. So often we talk about waste and resource management. Sustainable energy, there are two elements. One is producing green energy, and the other element is about consuming less. Biodiversity, well, biodiversity is typically a measure of variation at the genetic, species and ecosystem level. So perhaps a more encompassing term would be talking about ecosystems, ecosystems like agroecosystem, forest ecosystem, and aquatic ecosystems, which are all ecosystems you find within the Rhoda district natural environment. And then you could start talking about ecosystem services. So these are the many benefits that natural environment provides to people. Construction and existing buildings, if you tidy that up, that's probably built environment. And with the environmentally friendly council, I could not think of a more suitable term. So unless anyone else has other suggestions, I leave it as it is for the moment. Now, if anyone is alarmed that out of 8 priority areas, we have now lost 2 and we're talking about 6 now, please do not be alarmed, because I think what is useful to recognize that all these priority areas, all those original 8 priority areas, they are interlinked. So seeing them in a list is probably not helpful in terms of recognizing the linkages and causes and effects. And this is one example where if you take sustainable active transport and you invest in more segregated cycle lanes, for example, people will feel more safe to cycle, also provided that these cycle lanes are connecting key locations where people are trying to get to. So people might leave their car home, they decide to cycle. That would result in less cars on the road, therefore less pollution being emitted, less nitrogen oxides and carbon monoxide. That would lead to improved air quality, and in turn that could improve the natural environment as well as being a benefit to our well-being and health. Okay, so within my report I include 2 stakeholder maps. One is an internal map, which I'm showing here, where I have plotted the Rhoda district functions against the environment strategy priorities. The purpose of this is to identify impacts internally with this map, and it's useful for 2 reasons. One is it allows me to reflect on my new role, which is a new role for Rhoda District Council. So I do not lead on any of these functions. My role is to work across, engage with colleagues, and explore how their activities, objectives, and practices align with the vision and the priorities specified within the environment strategy. So I just zoom in. So as you can see, I have tried to map it. So the green boxes are the priority areas set within the environment strategy. And as you can see, I have also mapped it from the decreasing influence of control towards the increasing influence of control. So, air quality, there are statutory requirements to monitor and report, and there are colleagues within Rhoda District Council who fulfill that function. And then increasingly to the other side, where the Rodo District Council has significant control. That's obviously our organisation. So this is to do with our staff, with our assets, buildings, and with our processes and practices. So, for example, democratic services critical for engaging with members, financial services, procurement, again, engaging with our contractors. This map is also useful because it has allowed me to identify opportunities, and these are denoted in these yellow fields. So, as I have explained, Rodo District Council is not a transport authority. To my knowledge, we haven't got a dedicated lead with a mandate for active sustainable transport, cycling and walking. Under the theme of biodiversity, there are two opportunities. One is around the strategic overview for the green and blue infrastructure, and the other one is for the countryside and land management, bearing in mind that we are predominantly a rural district. And just to bear in mind, what I'm showing you is an updated version to the map that you have in your report. So this is, evolving as I have discussions with people and internally, and I'm updating this map. And then here, where we do have control, there's an opportunity around energy efficiency, carbon reduction, and heat decarbonization plans. So these yellow fields that I have identified, they are simply a result of these new demands and new priorities that are arising with the adoption of the environment strategy. These areas represent opportunities for making practical changes. They represent positive reasons for change. And these opportunities highlight that Rodo District Council staff have a very important role in tackling climate emergency and helping us deliver this environment strategy. What do we want staff to do? This is a question for managers. And how does this align with the vision and the priorities set within the environment strategy? So there are opportunities to adjust our ways of working, perhaps offer staff new roles or responsibilities, support them in continued professional development. Creating a compelling vision that excites employees and involves them in joining us on this journey is a role of internal communication. We could achieve so much more if there was a dedicated internal communication lead. Not just to engage with staff, but also work with managers. How do you translate the strategy and its priorities into action? This is just a summary in terms of looking at the opportunities in relation to the internal stakeholder map. I just wanted to pick up on two of those opportunities. So one is the strategic lead for green and blue infrastructure. And why is this important? So I asked this question a number of our partners and stakeholders. So I am effectively paraphrasing some of their responses. I found it really helpful. Green spaces is a different opportunity. They present a different opportunity, a different touch point to for the public to engage with a local authority like Rodo District Council. Green spaces are a window, a positive notice board representing opportunities to engage, raise awareness and educate the public about our green spaces and the benefits they deliver. Because if people know, they have the knowledge and awareness, they're going to be more caring about these places. So is this currently at the heart of what we do? I would probably say no. So in order to go beyond the narrow approach of just managing an external contract as part of, ground maintenance management, if you want to go beyond that and really recognize the value of green and blue spaces and the benefits they can deliver, it requires a markedly different approach, and it requires a strategic approach. With regards to the other opportunities, so the countryside and land management lead, as I said, Rhoda district is primarily a rural district. And this is about having a framework to identify and assess opportunities locally to create high quality nature-based solutions. It's about examining land usage across the district, examining our own assets, as well as looking to potentially acquire new assets in order to aid wildlife recovery, increase carbon capture, reduce flood risk, improve water quality, and other benefits. It's about determining the offset potential of land, which you may then turn into credits, which can be used as part of environmental mitigation. This part of the Nature Recovery Network commitment is set within the government's 25-year environment plan. And this is effectively a mechanism to plan for nature recovery at local level in a form of active restoration. And the Environment Bill is currently going through the Parliament, and there will be a requirement to create these nature recovery networks in each area across England. This role would straddle across planning and our property and estate, and would engage with high-yield AONB because it would meet objectives set within the high-yield AONB management plan. So, externally, the environment strategy is dual-facing, both internally and externally. And the environment strategy talks about partnership approach as a key approach to engaging externally. And this is one of the reasons why I was very keen to apply for this role, because I do believe in partnership working. And I'm absolutely delighted that a number of representatives of partner organizations have accepted an invite and are here today at this meeting. So again, I have created a stakeholder map, which I got here. Now, bearing in mind, this is the first time I believe a stakeholder map has been created like this. So I invite people, if I put them in a wrong box or if they are missing on a map and they would like to be included, please do get in touch. So again, I try to zoom in. So I have tried to plot basically the external stakeholders against the priorities, the revised priorities within the environment strategy. So we got transport, stakeholders here, renewable energy. It's interesting because not only it shows who we got, but also it identifies gaps and therefore opportunities where maybe there could be new groups and partnerships created. So good built environment. There's also a number of organizations that again straddle across multiple themes. So that'll be interesting to unpick that more, what these themes are. Ecosystem services, and then also if I just zoom out, this map recognizes the important role that the 31 parish and town councils play as part of the delivery of the environment strategy, and this is where RALC, the Rhoda Association of Local Councils, is a key partner for us engaging with these parishes and town councils. And also not forgetting the important role of the volunteer environmental officers that serve parishes and town councils. So these are the local footpath and footpath wardens and secretaries administered by ramblers, flood wardens that would have links to Environment Agency as the Category 1 responder under the Civil Contingencies Act, as is Rother District Council, and also tree wardens who are administered nationally by the Tree Council. So these volunteer environmental officers, they are eyes and ears on the ground. They fulfill a really important role. So it's important that I do engage with them as part of the environment strategy delivery. Just to bearing in mind, the map currently is showing about 70 groups plus 31 parish and town councils. And if you think of the 3 groups of the environmental officers, that's 3 times 30. So we're talking about 200 external stakeholders that are mapped out on the stakeholder map. So 200 external stakeholders. Rother District Council has about 250 employees, so that's 450 core stakeholders that I am expected to engage with as part of the environment strategy delivery. So this may explain why I'm focusing on this group of stakeholders. They are primarily volunteer, not-for-profit charity organizations within the environmental sector. And it's actually a really good strategy to grow the network because a lot of these organizations are membership organizations. So there are more people that are connected to these groups. So I think it's a good strategy to grow the network. But again, I need to prioritize. I will bring other stakeholders in, but we have to start somewhere. So in the report, I do have a action plan, a short action plan, currently until the end of financial year. It's quite high level. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And then within the report, there is one recommendation for the climate change steering group. There's a recommendation because this is not in the gift of the climate change steering group, but the climate change steering group can take a recommendation to the cabinet to create a new task and finish group. The objective of the task and finish group would be to nurture a more collaborative approach to caring for our green spaces, which is the current trend across the country, place the true value of these spaces at the heart of decision making. And also it's about securing future for these spaces in light of constraints and threats, whether it's limited resources or development. The group could be, called Park and Green Spaces Task and Finish Group, or Future Parks and Green Spaces Task and Finish Group, or Valuing Parks and Green Spaces Task and Finish Group. And this review would also feed potentially into the current review of the local plan that's ongoing currently and will be ongoing next year. So I think this is a real opportunity for the climate change steering group to make its mark and ensure that these spaces are valued into the future. So that's it. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Christina. Oh, I've got feedback. I'm hearing myself echo. Is everybody else all right with sound?
Sorry, Councillor, it's echoing back from Christina's mic. So I've just muted her for now, but she'll just need to make sure she's unmuted.
That's fine. Thank you. It's very disconcerting. Right. Thank you very much, Christina. That was very full and very useful and very interesting. Members, over to you. So far, my chat. Oh, hang on. Paul Cortell, Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. A very small question. Early on in the presentation, Dr. Sodomkova mentioned segregated cycle lanes, enabling people to feel more safe. There's an issue in my ward concerning the seafront in Bexhill, the promenade, which is at the moment a mixed space for pedestrians and cyclists. I'm getting a large number of complaints from pedestrians about feeling intimidated by cyclists. Could possibly a separate cycle lane on the promenade be investigated so as to reduce that area of conflict and enable cycling to thrive?
Thank you. I would respond to that, Councillor Courtart, by saying we do have the cycling and walking strategy from the County Council later on this agenda. Happy for Christina to try and answer that question. You won't remember, but this is a very, very, very old debate. And I thought that segregated cycling in this context referred to on roads, so that cyclists and cars were definitely separate. But I don't know. Christina. You're muted.
Thank you. The point I was making, I was just trying to illustrate the point of the linkages between the different elements. I didn't want to go into a detail, or it was just a generic comment I was making to illustrate the linkages between the priorities.
Thank you. Next I have Councillor Langlands, followed by Councillor Coleman, then Councillor Prochak. So Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, really. In terms of the green spaces, have we considered including gardens in that, in terms of a community type, drawing the community into our green space strategy more and getting them to consider what they might do in their own green spaces?
Can you ask your second question now, and then we can?
Yes. The other, well, there were just three short questions. The other one was, have we surveyed the staff to get an opinion from them about how they think they can make a greener council? Have we actually got any ideas from them? That might be worth doing, because some of them probably are pretty good. And the third thing was, are you playing, throwing all these at you, are you playing a role in what I can only phrase as possibly getting back to normal as a council and the changing ways we work? Will you be included in that, and is there any plans to discuss that?
Thank you. Dr. Sodomkova.
Okay, so the first question was about green spaces review, including private gardens. So the review that's been proposed is to do with the current external grounds maintenance contract that's going to be expired. It's going to expire in 2022. But if there was a strategic role looking at green spaces in general, yes, by all means, that could include gardens as well, private gardens. If Rother District Council, for example, carried out a tree canopy cover assessment using I3 Eco survey, that method would include a survey of trees, all trees, not just trees owned by Rother District Council or managed by East Sussex County Council, but also private trees. So yeah, there is a scope to include private green spaces into any reviews or discussions and assessments. And sorry, the third question, plans to discuss whether I would be involved bringing the council back to, sorry, that was the third question, bringing the council back to normal. I think I may ask my line manager Ben Hook maybe to answer that question.
Thanks, Christina. Yeah, so there's a number of actions, obviously, that senior management team will be taking over the next weeks and months to determine how and when the staff return to the office. No firm decisions have been made yet, but obviously the new ways of working that we've developed, this sort of environment, both with internal and external, colleagues and partners, will continue in some form into the future. There's a number of elements of that question to be considered in terms of both our accommodation, the way people commute to work, and so on and so forth. So we are reviewing all of those opportunities. As Malcolm's pointed out in the chat box, we've also introduced a digital suggestion box for staff on the internal Teams team. And we're going to start getting some suggestions through from staff members on the way that we proceed forward, so we can include in that suggestions with regards to how the environmental impact of the way we work as well.
Thank you. That's perfect. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I have now Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just quickly on Councillor Cortell's point, I won't labour on it, but in terms of segregating the promenade, the danger there is that cyclists grow more confident in going at high speeds because they think they've got their own lane, and it only takes one pedestrian to accidentally walk in the wrong lane, and they're a lot more risk than they would be when the promenade is shared. And also with the amount of effort that the Youth Council and others have went to try and get cycling on the promenade in the first place, I'd be very cautious about changing that in case we lose it completely. My main point was around a social retaining a social conscience really in all of this work, and making sure that we're sort of pursuing climate justice as well as preventing the climate emergency. And I guess it's with my anti-poverty task and finish group chair hat on, but I just wondered if Christina is retaining a sort of view of how we're affecting those who are sort of less fortunate than others, and making sure that our sort of environmental policies are helping those in poverty and those who are less well off, because there is great opportunities in terms of transport, in terms of energy, in terms of housing, for us to actually make a difference to people in lower socioeconomic circumstances through environmental work. And I wondered if that was a factor in sort of Christina's work at the moment.
Christina?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Coleman, for the question. Yeah, absolutely. And also in the Green Spaces review, again, COVID has highlighted inequalities when it comes to access to quality green spaces. So again, I would expect that element would be considered as part of a comprehensive review of green spaces, not just the quality of the green spaces, but also access to them. Does the access promote active travel? So yeah, definitely, I would have hoped that would be incorporated into any discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Prochak, followed by Councillor Gray. Sue.
Thank you very much. And congratulations on all that work that you've been doing since you came. You seem to have been running and cycling and walking around non-stop, and wonderful connections you've made. Very good. Very, very good. On green spaces, just by the way, Councillor Lynn Langlands, we had a wonderful talk yesterday by Reg on what your little garden can provide in terms of biodiversity. So I think the green spaces one I think we've got to be very clear about what we mean by green spaces. I mean, we got a 2010 rather did a inventory of ancient woodland, so that's already been done. And a very interesting point, if I may, is that I asked about, somebody's asked me about, we've got so many trees here, so do we have to worry much about carbon because we've got all these trees? Well, actually we do have to worry, but the answer was that the carbon is only captured by growing trees. So all the projects that we have about planting whips and etc. and hedges, that's a good thing. So that's my only comment about green spaces. Is it's a big big project. Can I ask a couple of things though? The first one is this week we had the East Sussex Strategic Partnership Conference, and that was all on climate change. And it was incredibly interesting with experts speaking. And as you know, we have said carbon neutrality by 2030. And carbon neutrality means keeping our emissions down below 1.5. I think that's the way it works. East Sussex County Council, we're working with Manchester University, said that going on as we are, we will exceed 1.5. This is across the county. We will exceed 1.5 in 7 years' time. What is needed is a 13% reduction every year. At the moment, there's about a 3% on average carbon reduction. And I just wondered whether we could actually talk a little bit more about how we're going to have, there was a very good talk about how we have to have this hierarchy for reducing carbon, which is avoid using it, reduce using it, substitute it for other things, and compensate. That would be the tree planting, etc. Because I think at the moment, I feel it's missing, because that's our target, the 2030 target. And I know all these things will contribute to it, but I'd quite like to see measurement of it. So that's my first question. Mm-hmm. Second one is wonderful, wonderful working in collaboration. But on page 13, Catherine, you will notice I'm using my iPad. On page 13, you've got the risks.
Round of applause.
The risk issues log. And it's just quite a negative picture, because it looks as though we haven't got resources to deliver this. They're all mostly high risk. And the last one is that, and I would like Christina to just give me a bit more information, give us some more information. It says the timing and content of the RDC environment strategy, and the risk is managing all external and internal stakeholders' expectations. And I think your conclusion, Christina, is that you want to manage the external rather than the internal. And I think what I want to say is that absolutely every member of staff, every councillor is the internal. And we all somehow should be working as your officers, if you like, as your team. And yes, I know you could do more with more resources, but you've got a huge resource in the council officers and the councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Christina.
Thank you, Councillor Pochak. So the first question was around the measurements and need to somehow account for the progress being made. So I would say again, that's part of the scoping exercise. I've been here 3 months, so I'm still scoping, and one of the activities that I have included in my Gantt chart is to come up with some monitoring and evaluation framework. So I would have hoped that that would address that point, that we're going to have something tangible that will allow us to monitor the progress. In terms of the engagement internally and externally, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? As I highlighted, because there hasn't been a phased approach, but there hasn't been a phased approach. So therefore now, as I have showed you in my stakeholder maps, I now have 450 stakeholders, at least, to try to engage with. And I don't want to be neglecting one group at the expense of the other. So that is something for a discussion with yourself, with the climate change steering group, internally as well. How we're going to address this. I simply flagging it up because I think it's important to be open and flag it up at the beginning. Any what I call, risk. It is a risk for me as a delivery manager. It's a risk, and I think it's important to be open about it. So if 6 months, 8 months down the line, someone questions, Christina, why you haven't done this, then I can say, well, I have brought it up to the attention. Ben?
Ben, you wanted to come in and answer Councillor Prochak's point.
Yeah, and I mean, Councillor Prochak raises a very good point, particularly with regards to the resource gaps that Christina's identified. And we are one council, and we are all in effect, environment officers as part of our roles. I think the point that Christina's highlighted is that historically speaking, the people haven't necessarily taken the environment as part of, as to the very hearts of their roles. And what we want to start doing is now identifying gaps in terms of our delivery and our services that can be easily filled, if you like, by ensuring that certain roles take a more environmental view on their actions. That could be waste contract management, that could be leisure services, it could be parks and gardens. Do you know what I mean? It's about identifying where we've historically not done things in an environmentally friendly way, and re-gearing the roles that already exist within the organisation to make sure that we start plugging those gaps where we can. Where there are true resource issues, we will always raise them up, in terms of through budgetary priorities and things like that, in the way that we have done through appointing Christina. When members made the conscious decision to allocate sufficient budget to ensure that we had somebody to drive forward the environment strategy. So I think at this stage it's just identifying gaps that we then as officers can go away and decide how we're going to fill those gaps by re-gearing existing roles to make sure they have an environmental focus. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Thank you. First of all, Christina, thank you very much for such an excellent in-depth report. It's truly impressive, especially as you've only been in post for 3 months. So thank you. I want to ask you about trees, but before I do, could I just very quickly go back to Councillor Cortell's cycling question? I know Councillor Coleman's already addressed it, but I just wanted to point out that in Hastings, we know there is a segregated cycle path on the seafront, and it causes more problems than it's worth. Cyclists think they can go faster because they're in a safe space, pedestrians don't notice, and it causes so many problems that here in Bexhill we decided better to share the space. Share and care, I think, was the motto. So that's why we don't have a segregated space on the seafront, although I'm in huge favour in having segregated cycle spaces in the roads, as you know, but that's a different matter. Trees, back to trees. You mentioned tree wardens, and I know some parishes have tree wardens, and I just wondered whether you wanted to say a bit more about plans for tree wardens here in Bexhill.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Yes, so as part of the scoping activities I have been doing, I have tried to identify who the tree wardens are, but also who the footpath wardens and secretaries are, and who are the flood wardens. There may be one person fulfilling all these roles within a parish or a town council, or there may be 3 separate people fulfilling these roles. So there is now, so bearing in mind that there are tree wardens, they are administered by East Sussex County Council, who coordinate a group of, I believe, 97 tree wardens in East Sussex County Council. And I've had discussions with the East Sussex County Council officer. And as part of the environment strategy delivery, there is now a program being developed to engage with the tree wardens for the next year, 2021. And that is currently under development. So number of Rother tree wardens through the East Sussex County Council contact have got in touch, and I'm currently in discussions with them on what the program could look like, including training, including ice dieback surveys, So yeah, I hope I will be able to share more with you, but at the moment the discussions are very embryonic. So I would just ask any tree wardens, rhododendron tree wardens, to get in touch if they are interested. And the same I'm hoping to be doing, discussing any program of activities for the flood wardens and the local footpath wardens and secretaries.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. That's the end of the comments and the questions I have, but I'm very conscious our non-councillor members of this group haven't said anything yet. Would any of them like to add anything, ask any questions, or are you all happy? No one's shouting, no one's raising a hand, so I guess we're okay. Right. Oh, hang on. Dominic, you're happy. Good. Thank you. So scattered throughout this report in 25, 26, 27 and 39, we have recommendations. If you could just have a quick look at them to make sure we're in agreement. 26 talks about SIL being focused, or asking Cabinet to focus SIL on environmental projects. Are we happy to proceed down that line?
Councillor Field, I will address that in my next presentation, the funding, the recommendations around the funding mechanisms, if I may, please. Right. I have included it in that report, but it's related to the second report, sorry.
So, right. So is there anything in this report that we need to be agreeing now?
Is the recommendation around the green spaces a review?
That's 39.
Yes.
Yes. So 39 asks us to ask Cabinet to start a task and finish group to look at the green spaces review. Are you, Councillor Prochak?
Just as I tried to say in my comments, that I think Cabinet will need more information than just green spaces.
Right, Ben?
Sorry, my mic was on mute. Is the task and finish group more the role for overview and scrutiny rather than Cabinet at this stage? Just sort of thinking task and finish groups tend to emanate from overview and scrutiny in the first instance.
I wanted to clarify if that was a task and finish group emanating from scrutiny, in which case we need to talk to Councillor Osborne, or if it was just another group with that name. I would have thought, personally, if the grounds maintenance contract is up for discussion anyway, it should come via the Scrutiny Committee's work programme. You're nodding, Councillor Osborne. Do you want to say anything?
I would tend to agree with you, Chairman. If we're going to be looking at the grounds maintenance contract, which comes up in 2022, it takes at least 12, 15 months to do that. So that would probably be a good time to get it on the work programme and set up a group looking at the grounds maintenance contracts and include in that any environmental improvements we can make.
Thank you. So the minutes of this meeting should record that we've had this discussion and that you believe it should be part of the Scrutiny Committee's work programme.
Yeah.
In conjunction with renewing the grounds maintenance contract. Right. Are committee members happy with that? You're all nodding. Thumb up. Right, good. I think then that's agreed. In which case, can we move to the next agenda item, which is you again, Christina?
Thank you very much, Councillor Field. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. The second report looks at the grant schemes from an environmental perspective. Sorry. Let me move to the next one. Okay, here we go. So in this presentation, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the community grant scheme and the review findings. I'm going to touch upon the Rhodes District Council Community Infrastructure Levy and then I'll summarize the recommendations around there. And I have also included a timeline that I hope you will find useful. Now, why has this report been prepared? Why has this review been done? Well, Rhoda District Council, this is one area we have control over. So as part of the environment strategy delivery, this is something we can really influence. It's also aligning the Rhoda District funding mechanisms with the climate emergency commitments, with the agenda, with the vision and the priorities set within the Rhoda District environment strategy. And this also represents a window of opportunity, again, for the climate change steering group to make an impact and bring about positive change that would benefit Rhoda natural environment. So, as part of this review, what I have done, I looked in detail at one of the grant schemes that's available within Rhoda District Council, and I looked at it from an environmental perspective. So this is just an overview about the community grant scheme, what it is, what is its purpose. So it's about supporting the development of community facilities, development of community facilities and community activities, as well as sustainable local action. The word sustainable in the guidance notes that I have located, the word sustainable is not defined as meaning environmental sustainability. It's defined as meaning operating in the long term. And the community grant scheme, there are grants of different sizes. You can get up to 50% of the total project cost to be funded. There are 2 funding rounds. As I understand it, they are approved by the Cabinet in March and September. Rhoda District Council has plenty of information on its website, which provides details about eligibility and how to put an application together. And under the guidance, it says that proposals are eligible, and these include environmental improvements in towns or villages, community transport and acquisition of public open spaces or woodland for conservation, as explicit example of activities that could be funded under this scheme. So, I analyzed the grants that have been awarded within a 12-year period, 2009 to 2021. The awarding calendar goes by the financial year, not calendar year, and that's why it's 2021, because the last funding period is 20 to 2021. Most of the grants have been awarded in the category of sport and construction. In the 12-year period, there were only 10 grants that have been awarded to a cause that was fully or partially environmental, and I'll come back to that. These grants were given to 10 different entities. 7 of these were parish councils or groups associated with parish and town councils. So there were only 3 recipients who were voluntary groups. So again, thinking about our external stakeholders and partnership working, only 1 project was delivered in a form of a partnership. Here is an overview of the grants in that funding period, in that 12-year funding period. And just to explain about the cause. So this information is not ordinarily held by Rhoda District Council. So Rhoda District Council doesn't collate information about the cause or category. This category was created for the purpose of this review. It was added in as part of the analysis where all the grants awarded within that period were reviewed and then assigned to these 10 broad categories. And projects with at least partially perceived environmental cause were categorized as environmental, bearing in mind that obviously some projects could be categorized, as falling into multiple categories. But for the purpose of this analysis, they were just included in one category. This is obviously quite a subjective exercise, so the categorization was done by one Rhodes District Council officer and then reviewed by 2 other officers as part of kind of a validity exercise to ensure that the analysis was fairly robust. So environmental causes are ranked 4th here in terms of number of grants and the amount awarded. And if we look at a pie chart, environmental projects or projects for environmental causes receive 7% of funding in this 12-year period. Transport received 2%, and when I say transport, looking in depth at these grants awarded, none of it was about active or sustainable transport. So it wasn't about creating, new cycle paths or segregated cycle lanes or whichever cycle lanes you may prefer. It was mainly that 2% went mainly towards purchasing second-hand vehicles and a minibus. So majority, nearly 50% of those grants went towards sport, and the second biggest chunk went towards construction type of activities. In my report, there's a series of recommendations. If the Rhodes District Council and the Climate Change Steering Group believe that the Rhodes District Community Grant Scheme should be used as a main mechanism for fueling and awarding environmental enhancements within the district, these are the recommendations how that grant scheme could be amended to align again with the climate emergency commitments and the vision and the priorities that are set within the environment strategy. So you could set measurable targets, and there are different ways of doing it. You could set, you could say how many projects, environmental projects you want to fund per year, the percentage of the funding, or the exact amount you want to be spent on these type of projects. There will be a need to revise the eligibility criteria to be more friendly towards environmental projects. So currently, the eligibility criteria are skewed towards awarding one-off activities and one-off capital funding investments. Now, capital funding doesn't support ongoing expenditure, and the eligibility criteria, they state funding to continue projects and services already established is not eligible under the grant scheme currently, nor are feasibility studies, but there's no definition of what a feasibility study is. But the success of many environmental schemes relies on continuous upkeep, and this is excluded currently under the eligibility criteria. Feasibility studies and baseline surveys are often critical starting point for environmental projects, whilst recurrent surveys and monitoring allow to assess progress over time. And again, such activities are currently excluded. And in line with the ambition to work more collaboratively with partners, again, the eligibility criteria could be amended to really support and propel partnership working. I have mentioned an environmental impact assessment. I just want to apologize. I don't mean environmental impact assessment as a planning instrument. I mean some sort of an environmental statement that would consider not just the impact of environmental type of projects, but other type of projects when it comes to purchasing materials or construction or retrofitting, that there will be explicit considerations for the environment would be as part of the application. I'm also suggesting bringing environmental experts on the awarding panel as a safeguard to ensure that projects would deliver benefits for the environment, they wouldn't cause more harm. As part of the effort to, again, promote partnership working, an option could be to devise some sort of a partner mentor scheme. So you may have community groups who want to deliver an environmental project, but haven't got the experience. Whilst there are groups within our district who have the knowledge and experience. So whether there could be some sort of a formal arrangement, and that could be costed into the project. The guidance material will have to be updated because currently it makes no reference to the environment strategy and again to the climate emergency commitments Rhodo District Council has made. And the last suggestion is to promote the funding scheme more to environmental groups within Rhodo District, so they are aware and can apply. Okay. The in-depth analysis of the Rhodo District Community Grant Scheme, I've then used those findings to extrapolate the thinking, to kind of expand it onto thinking about other schemes within Rhodo District Council. And we got community infrastructure levy. So this is a form of a developer contribution which can be levied by local authorities on new development in the area to provide infrastructure to support the development and mitigate the impact of development. And we have another steering group within Rhodo District Council, so the Community Infrastructure Levy Steering Group, and I understand that they are currently discussing how is the funding being allocated and identifying strategic infrastructure needs. So again, this is a window of opportunity for the Climate Change Steering Group to influence these decisions. And there are different options. You can either set a target, so you can allocate percentage of the funding to go towards environmental causes, or you can be really bold, as Cornwall Council has been, where they turned their sale funding green and solely dedicated it towards the climate emergency agenda. And this is a summary of the recommendations in this second report, where I review the community grant scheme. So one is for Climate Change Steering Group to initiate dialogue with the other steering group on how the community infrastructure levy funding is allocated in an alignment with the environment strategy commitments, the climate emergency commitments. If Rhodo District Council and the Climate Change Steering Group believe that the Rhodo District Council Community Grant Scheme should be used as a vehicle for funding environmental projects, there will have to be changes prepared. There's obviously devil in the details, so the practicality of these changes would have to be thought through. And for this to take place from the new financial year, those changes will have to be put forward to Cabinet, as I understand it from discussions with Democratic Services. So there will have to be some work done within the next coming months. If that opportunity is missed, then we're going to have another year where the Rhodo District Community Grant Scheme is running and potentially not supporting the environment and climate emergency agenda. And then there's a wider recommendation suggesting actually all the Rhodo District Council schemes, I don't know, there may be more, should be reviewed, potentially in consultation with other funders. So for example, the Sussex Land Trust, Sussex Community Foundation as well. There may be projects that straddle across Rhodo district boundaries. You may have a project that's half Wealden, half Rhodo. So it may be useful to engage in discussions with the other neighbouring local authorities on what they are doing, what funding they have available for environmental projects and causes, and also discussion with East Sussex County Council and what are they planning as part of the delivery of the East Sussex environment strategy. So this is the timeline. So we are here, 25th of November, Climate Change Steering Group. So we are here. The SIL steering group is meeting on the 8th of February. So this has been put based on advice from Democratic Services, and I'm grateful for their advice. So climate change steering group would have to bring it up with the cabinet, for the cabinet to influence any decisions being made at that scheduled meeting in February by the SIL steering group. In terms of the changes to the Road District Community Grant Scheme amendments, these will have to be submitted to Cabinet either on 1st of March or 29th of March. I'm excluding the February meeting because I think that'll be too soon. You may say 29th of March is maybe too late. And just to complete the picture, I've also included 15th of March date, which is the overview and scrutiny meeting date. And on that schedule currently, there is an environment strategy update. And therefore, I'm subsequently proposing that we meet again, the Climate Change Steering Group meets again in April. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christina. And could you turn your mic off? I'm getting feedback again. Sorry, thank you. Could I just say, fascinating that such radical suggestions were hidden in a report so blandly titled. Well done. I know that Ben wants to come in and add a few things before I throw the meeting open. Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity to add some bits to what Christina's said there. It's more to ask just to add some wider context, in particular with regards to the grant funding. I mean, Christina's mentioned that the SIL steering group is due to meet in the early next year. They have also been tasked with reviewing the grant funding in the context of SIL as well. You know, obviously, particularly with regards to local SIL. What I would, with regards to grant funding is, it's currently funded through our reserves. And as anyone who's watched either the overview and scrutiny meeting recently or the cabinet meeting, reserves are not something of which we have a plenty, or at least going into future years. So we are also looking at other opportunities for different funding streams for those community grants, which are being considered both at the SIL steering group and also separately to that, in partnership with the chairman of the grants committee, who is Councillor Prochak. So it's more just to say that this sort of it's absolutely right that this group consider the environmental steer with regards to all of our funding streams and make recommendations to both cabinet and the right bodies. What I would like to suggest is that this group ask the SIL steering committee to consider their the recommendations of the environment and climate change steering group in their overall recommendation to cabinet that comes once they've had the opportunity to meet. So that way both groups have had the opportunity to explore that, and the SIL steering group have had the opportunity to review the recommendations of this group and then make one single voiced recommendation up to cabinet, so that all of those points of view are taken in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Personally, I think that's an extremely good idea. I am slightly concerned that we're now end of November and the budget round is coming up very quickly. Does what you propose fit in with the budget cycle? Because I don't want to leave it for another year.
I think we've got a funding round for community grants coming up for the remainder of this year's fund anyway. I think what we could look to do, depending on the outcomes of the discussions at the SIL steering group and those discussions at cabinet, we don't have to launch the first funding round for the community grants in 2021-22 in April. We could put that back by a couple of months to ensure that the correct democratic processes are undertaken to change that scheme in time for the first funding call. So it may mean that we lose a couple of months, but we would never intend to lose a whole year.
Thank you. Could I ask Councillor Prochak for a view?
Thank you. As chairman of the Community Grants Steering Group and a great champion of it, and we also have here Councillor Paul Osborne and also Councillor David Pankhurst, who's on that panel, we obviously feel quite a strong ownership of it, and it's been a very popular way of kickstarting smaller projects across Rother. And a small comment I would make is in the calculation on environment or not environment in terms of grants we give. I think, you know, you need to look at this broadly. So if somebody's putting in insulation and heating into a village hall, that seems to me that it's an environmentally positive move, because it will be a more modern heater and insulation is added. So we probably could get more than 10 projects that we would say, well, yes, that supports the environment. And even, you know, green spaces, play areas, they also, in my mind, support the environment. So I think there's a little bit of leeway with that sort of thing. The other thing is we've only just reviewed the terms of reference for the community grants. The big issue, and I think Ben's flagged this up, the big issue with community grants is it's not sustainable. And there is, on the work programme, we are going to be looking at introducing a lottery to see if we can actually raise funds to support community grants. Having said that, I am also on the SIL group, and it was my initiative that said, well, let's look at them together. Let's look at what we are doing. So I'm with Christina in her let's be bold, but I think it's a much better suggestion to take it to the SIL group, and then we can have one recommendation to Cabinet. The other thing I'd like to say, if I may, is that at the end of the last report, we had a little section on funding applications, and there seems to me a plethora of green grants out there, and Christina's found some of them. I think we should really be directing our energy and resources at actually looking at the green grants. It's external money. It's not from our taxpayers. It's money from green organisations, and there's the Public Sector Low Carbon Skills Fund. Well, that was the first time I'd heard about that one. And Christine says an application is being prepared on behalf of RDC. Now, I don't think I don't think Christina, with all the work she has, can maybe dedicate all her time, any time and effort onto these grants. But instead of recommendation 3, I would like the panel, the group, to consider whether we should actually direct our efforts and energy at getting some of these external grants, rather than an internal review of our grants. Thank you.
Is that a formal proposal?
I'd like to make it one, if that gets support. I'd quite like to hear from David and Paul as well about the community grants.
Just about to call them. Who shall I go to first? Paul? That came out strangely. Paul.
I would tend to agree with what Sue said, actually. I was thinking the same when we, if there's an improvement to a village or something else, then or building works or anything else, usually it's built to better standards. You know, we have an upgrade in heating. Even in Peasmarsh Village Hall, they had an upgrade to their hot water system. So it must be, that sort of environmentally friendly, if you like. But the rest of what Sue said, yeah, I would agree with that. Tie things together and, yeah, makes sense. And I'm also a big fan of the community grants, because as we can see, it just gets so many smaller projects sort of off the ground and up and running. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Pankhurst.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Paul and Sue on this one with the community grant. It does actually make a hell of a difference to a lot of the communities, even the small grants. And I'm slightly concerned if we base it too much towards the environment, we're in danger of perhaps affecting other things like play spaces. You could argue those are a greening up, or part of the green environment, and also, of course, you get sports and you get fresh air and all the rest of it. So I think it needs to be looked at quite carefully. But certainly, I think we need to certainly look at it and see how it can be tailored more specifically for people. So yeah, in agreement with Sue and Paul on that one.
Thank you. I would add that in my own town, we've had community grant money to build a health pathway, which certainly Sue knows about. It's been remarkably successful. It's so well used, and it gets people out into the fresh air with their bikes, their children, their dogs, and just appreciating what's going on out there, because it does link into other open spaces. So Sue, you're proposing that. Do I take it, Paul, you're happy to second?
Yep, very happy to second that, Chairman.
So any more discussion from members? I've got nothing. Oh yes, Councillor Langlands.
Yes, it was just a quick question. Do we have anyone in-house that sources external grants that is capable of doing that to a really good degree, if you know what I mean? Or do we have to have individual officers going and sourcing that, or happening to hear about it? Do we have that sort of person within Rother?
Ben has indicated he wants to speak, so Ben.
Yeah, no, just to sort of answer Councillor Langland's question there, what tends to happen is individual service areas who have a specific knowledge of the funding streams that are available to them, identify those funding streams and make those bids. We don't have a specific bid writing team or funding sourcing team. I think the opportunities, when you look at an organisation the size of East Sussex County Council, it becomes a much more valuable tool because you get a lot of information coming out of government. But I think with specific regards to the sorts of funding streams that we can access, it's probably best dealt with by individual service heads who have a knowledge of what's applicable to us and what funding streams are available.
Thank you. I slightly disagree with that, if I could just say, because Ben, the County Council's finding department will work with anybody. You've only got to ring up Veronique and say what you want money for, and she'll tell you if it's around. So
yeah, we do have a very good relationship with Veronique Putrell at East Sussex County Council, and she does feed information down to us through their grant finder scheme as and when it happens, but it's down to the individual heads of service to sort of pursue that as and when we get that information come through.
Can I just finish that up with, do we have a good success rate on that? Or are we, I mean, how many do we not achieve because maybe we haven't filled it out correctly?
I mean, I can only speak on what we've done recently. In terms of my own service area, we've received almost £1 million in grant funding for the Bexhill Creative Studios on Beeching Road. And we're up for 1.75 million in loan funding towards the Barnhorn, interest-free loan funding towards the Barnhorn Green development. I know that Joe Powell's service area, particularly in the housing aspect, have had a lot of recent successes in drawing down grant funding for various revenue schemes and, the social agency, the social renting agency schemes, and so on and so forth. You might want to jump in at this point to just outline some of them. But yeah, I think definitely in my tenure here, I've been here 2.5 years. We've definitely had a successful record in that period of time that I'm aware of in terms of getting awards for various projects and programs.
Okay.
I would just add, so thanks Ben for being so kind, your kind words. I would suggest that really it is part of job roles. So it's a specialist area. For example, my homelessness is very distinct from what Rebecca does in parks, for example, and Adrian does with sports. They're sort of embedded in the detail of those areas, and it's part of their role is to keep their head up to funding opportunities and to it would be very difficult, I think, and as Ben says, in a sort of economy of scale, it would be very difficult for one person to hold all of those specialisms in their head at one time, I suppose. But we also have that shared resource in the county as well for support in the sort of the process, perhaps, and for funding we may not be aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Burton.
My microphone doesn't want to unfreeze.
We could hear you, Sue.
You've muted again.
I can't. Oh. Can you hear me? Right. Thank you, everybody. Sorry about that. So as a recent recipient of the Rother Community Grants, as was mentioned, there are 2 points I'd like to make. Is that how a project is completed is key to using the money well. For example, what sort of heating are you going to put in a new scheme? Is it going to be a new modern environmentally, or are you going to replace a gas boiler with a better gas boiler? So I do think the element of the aspects of the construction, of how you do it, whether you use recycled materials, etc., should be part of promoting these other projects, but how they do them. In relation to Battle Health Pathway, which we did receive a community grant fund, it was down to one of the volunteers that promoted within that project, which is not funded by yourselves, is the biodiversity, meadows and trees, etc. That is totally separate, and that depended totally on the knowledge and keenness of the volunteers as part of the project. So the project could have gone ahead without any biodiversity improvements, but fortunately it will have those. Thank you.
Thank you. I see nobody else. So could you then clarify what exactly it is we're voting on?
Thank you. I can't find in the report because Christina put up 3 recommendations. Yeah.
Yes, they're separate. Do you want the slide back? Do you want the slide back?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Can you put your slide back with the recommendations on, Christina?
And I might need Ben's support, help for the 3rd one.
And Sue, will you take your hand down?
Sue Burton, that is. Can we get the slide back?
Christina, you're
Chairman, do you want me to read them out for you? As I've got them in front of me.
Okay.
So recommendation 1 was the Climate Change Steering Group to initiate a dialogue with Rother District Council SEAL Steering Group on how Rother District Council SEAL funding is allocated in line with environment strategy, climate emergency commitments. That was the first one.
I think that's straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah. Are we all in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Yes, we are. Good.
Okay, so the second one was Rother District Council Community Grants Scheme prepare changes to take place from the new financial year starting in April 2021.
Is that the one you've amended, Sue?
No, it was a third one.
Right.
I mean, I don't know, Ben, do you think this is possible?
To initiate a review of all of our funding schemes. I mean, I think it is. I think it's just a matter of making sure that obviously each funding scheme will have its own criteria. So it is quite a piece of work. I think we just need to limit expectations on when that work can be completed by. I think we should focus energies on things that we have direct control over, particularly the community grant scheme, which are our own funding streams. And there are other funding streams that we initiate, but they're often sort of pass on streams, come through from other bodies into us, so they may have their own criteria attached. In terms of the recommendation too, I think that was the one where we were looking to say to sort of work again with the SIL steering group to make sure it was a comprehensive approach that was recommended. But yes, I don't see recommendation 3 being an issue. I just think we need to be realistic in our expectations as to how long that might take, given other priorities.
So recommendation 2 is not a drop everything and do it now recommendation. It's a do it as we're going along. Yes.
I would say recommendation 2 should probably be amended to say that the community grants scheme prepare changes in line with recommendations as made by the SIL steering group, who will consider the input from this group here. So we'll find a form of words that sort of reflects that, I would suggest, because I think what we need to do is ask the SIL steering group to take into account what the recommendations are from this group, and then present a single recommendation to Cabinet.
Right, members of the panel, then, if anybody doesn't agree with that, can you shout at me?
I'm fine with 2, the way Ben's changed it.
Right.
I'm not. I'd like to change 3.
Yes, hang on, we'll do 2 first.
Yeah.
Is everybody happy with Ben's changes to 2? Good, thank you. That brings us to 3. Ben.
I think Councillor Prochak was.
2. One of
you. Well, maybe we keep that one if Ben thinks it's okay, and add another one, because I would like some of our focus to be on these external grants, because and Ben, I'm sure we can do that, can't we? Actually look at alternative funding sources.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's very much embedded into what Christina's role is about, and I know she's already explored a number of opportunities to lever in funding for a range of either additional resource or supporting schemes out there in the community. So definitely, it is absolutely embedded into what we're doing already in terms of looking for those external funding opportunities, and I think. What Christina's doing very well at the moment is working with the individual service areas to make sure that as these sort of environmental grants come through and the funding opportunities come through, is that the individual service areas who may lead on housing or planning have access to those grants as and when they become available. So it's sort of making those linkages between these external funding and the other service areas.
Thanks. It doesn't actually say that recommendation.
No.
Okay. I mean, I think this is. I think the recommendation is more focused on grants that we manage, like and other funding that we provide. I mean, just looking at things, we obviously provide funding for through grants to RVA, to the CAB, to the Delaware Pavilion, so on and so forth. So I think what Christina's recommendation here is focused more on that. It's sort of where do we spend our money as an organisation, and how are we supporting others, and then what are our neighbouring local authorities doing? What does Wealden do to in terms of their grants, and how is there opportunities for us to do that together or align with them in how we do this? I think it's more of I think recommendations three is more of why don't we take a holistic look at our grant funding and our funding schemes that we control in Rother. Tourism's another one, tourism events. There are lots of these little scheme pots of money that we give out, and then how do we have an environmental focus with regards to those, and do we even ask those sorts of questions? Environmental impact assessments for the tourism events that we run or fund, that sort of thing. I think it's more about that. So more of an inward-looking one rather than an outward-looking one at this stage. But I do want to reassure you that we look outwardly to all the external funding opportunities that come available.
Christina.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor. I just wanted to say, in that third point, the consideration I have also thought about is the administration of grants. So, there is a resource that will be required to administer grants. There may be other organisations within our district. They are well placed to administer these grants. So also looking at the administration side, is it best to be done in-house by our staff, or perhaps is there an expertise within the district that will allow us to administer a grant scheme, an environmental grant scheme on our behalf?
Thank you. I have to say, I hadn't really understood that from the words on the page. I must confess, I'm not quite sure where to go with this one. Sue, you seem to, and Paul, between you had a very good replacement for this. Can you remember what you said?
Chairman, do you want me to try and clarify from what has been said? From what I can gather from what Councillor Prochak said, it would be something like to consider directing or consider focus and resources towards investigating alternative funding sources for environmental grants or something like that. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
I'm very happy with that, and picking up on Ben's point, where we are going to look at our basically our service level agreements and our contractors. We're in process of doing that anyway, aren't we? I mean, for example, the Delaware have their green program, but whether we have to specify that we will only give contracts, grants, money is a whole different ball game. So I'm very happy with that, Julie.
So can I just clarify then that we're not accepting recommendation 3 at all, and we're replacing it with the one that I've just said?
Yes. Everybody
okay,
agree?
thank you.
Is that all right with you, Ben?
I'll rephrase that.
Absolutely. I think that seems like a really sensible way forward.
Right. If anybody doesn't agree with that, can you say so now? Right. I think we're all in agreement. Thank you very much, members. That took some doing, but I think we've got a very good recommendation in the end. Thank you. So in that case, we can move on to the next item, which doesn't have a report with it, does it? It's a paperless pledge. Christina.
Thank you, Councillor Field.
Sorry, Chairman, we've missed out a agenda item here. We've got the Sussex County Council consultation on the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan.
So sorry. Yes, I'm not functioning well today. Item 5 is just what Julie said. So yes, Christina, could you introduce it, please?
Yeah, of course. I'm just putting a presentation up. Sorry, 1 second. Here we go. Are you able to see it? Are you able to see it? Sorry.
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
we are. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a presentation that was kindly shared by colleagues from East Sussex County Council. It gives a bit of a background to the current consultation. So the consultation opened in October this year, and it closes on 11th of December. So there is an option to formulate a response on behalf of the Climate Change and Steering Group, or people may wish to respond individually. So the consultation, the origin of it is the cycling and walking investment strategy that was set up by the Department for Transport in 2017. And within the strategy, there was an item, and it was about producing these local cycling, walking infrastructure plans by local authorities to allow them to come up with a strategic approach on this topic. So 2017, and then subsequently the government also produced a new strategy, Gear Change. And I've highlighted some of the points. So there are a number of objectives as well. There are some key design principles within this new strategy. Key design principles, it talks about cycling will become mass transit and must be treated as such. Routes must be designed for a larger number of cyclists, for users of all abilities and disabilities. It's putting cycling and walking at the heart of transport, placemaking and health policy. And it's about empowering and encouraging local authorities. So that is the national context. And then I'm following from the slides that my East Sussex County Council colleagues prepared. I believe this must have been as part of a presentation perhaps delivered to districts and boroughs earlier in a year. So it talks about the development of the local infrastructure plans within East Sussex. So there's a strategy and there's an infrastructure plan. There is a vision. I'm not sure where the vision comes from, because I have not seen that articulated within the strategy document. So I'm unclear where this text comes from. And this sets the different elements within the strategy, so there'll be key principles, policy and infrastructure that will include elements of design and engagement, and also partnership working is the preferred approach. And then there's a useful policy landscape map, which shows how this infrastructure plan links to different strategies and policies at the different levels, so nationally, sub-regionally, and on a local level. And in red there, you see the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, which is what East Sussex County Council is currently consulting on. And within the infrastructure plan, East Sussex County Council divided East Sussex into two key areas. One is a coastal East Sussex and one is rural East Sussex. And those areas are listed on the slide there. And then this explains the approach, the method, how the infrastructure plan was being designed and how they prioritize the improvements, which the method is described in a technical guidance produced by the government. And then this slide shows how, when the plan is following the consultation, when the plan is adopted, how that would be subsequently used and how it would be then incorporated with other documents, strategies and policies, for example, with planning. And then the next slides, next couple of slides, these are just my comments. So you know, this is just my own observations based on the scrutiny of the documents. So one observation is the time lag. So the government has announced this in 2017. We're consulting on this 2020. Consultation is ongoing now until December. So it will take some time to go through the comments and then adopt the document. So 2021, okay. But the reason for the time lag could be because this plan is being developed at such a large scale for the whole East Sussex County Council. I have seen plans, they've been developed at the district level. So Horsham, Worthing and Adur, they are all developed at district level. So that could be a reason for that. The consultation, there are 28 separate documents. That's again, maybe to do with the geographical scale the plan is trying to address. I can't see vision, aims and objectives within the strategy document, but maybe it is somewhere, but I couldn't see it. In the key stakeholders around the governance, the local access forum, I'm unclear, they don't seem to be included. Local access forum advises, this is the definition, local access forum advises decision-making organizations, such as local authorities, about making improvements to public access for outdoor recreation and sustainable travel. They can set their own priorities and they respond to consultations and draft policy documents. So, yeah, I'm unclear on that. Now, this is one of the statements within the draft plan. It talks about focusing on areas where there are greatest opportunities to get as many people as possible cycling and walking. So my comment would be, well, you need to segment these journeys. if you segment them, then they will be COVID pandemic proof, because then, you know, as we all know, commuter journeys probably are not taking place as much as they would have prior to the pandemic. Now let's see how the segmentation is within the draft plan, how that's been done. So Appendix 6 is the prioritization framework. And what I'm missing is some of the criteria. So the length of journey, because the length of journey may impact, in my understanding, may impact on the type of infrastructure you would be encouraging and putting in place. So longer journeys you would cycle, short journeys you may decide to walk. The only segmentation, well, there doesn't seem to be segmentation as shown in as suggested in my previous slide. The criteria, how the areas put forward to be prioritized for improvements, seems to be purely on population size. Now, again, the prioritization, so this is again a statement from the draft document. It talks about they're going to prioritize the coastal strips and larger market towns. So my comment would be, well, the coastal strip, larger market towns, they're already served by network of public transport, or some public transport, certainly better than the rural parts of Rother district, where the rural parts, they have no alternative than to drive. So from an environmental perspective, I would have thought, I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that. And also, I've just got a little map here, which is showing the long distance cycle routes, and also showing the boundaries of the districts. And as you can see, well, there's hardly anything within Rother district. There is something along the coast, but there's hardly anything in the rest of the district. So wouldn't that be an area to focus on and try to do something? And then finally, my final comment is about the school journeys. So school journeys are COVID proof in a sense that children are still going to school. And there is a specific target within the technical guidance document. Government has set a target specifically for children, how many children should be more walking to schools. And if I look at the Ada and Worthing plan, there are circa 50 references to schools in the document. So the school journeys are real focus, where the improvements are being focused. In our draft document, there are 6 references to schools, mainly in Battle, and this is thanks to Sue Burton and the 1066 Cycle Club, who ensured that school journeys and were looked at as part of the Battle plan. I'm not sure how school data have been used within our own plan. And in terms of the Appendix 6, where there are some maps looking specifically at school journeys, the only map for Rother is there for Bexhill, which is looking at the schools go Dutch scenario, which represents what would happen if English school children became as likely to cycle as their Dutch counterparts for a trip of a given distance and hilliness. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. That was really interesting. So I'm getting feedback again. Could you mute? That's better. Thank you. I mean, it seems to me, observationally, that there should be much less traffic on the road. Now more people are working at home, but there isn't. And I suspect that is often people just being taken to school in their cars, which I believe shouldn't be happening. So thank you for pointing that out. I think that was a point really well made. Are your comments in blue what you're proposing should be our response to this consultation?
Sorry, Councillor Field. I've simply shared those observations. Like I say, they are my own. You may not necessarily agree with them, but my purpose was solely to bring this consultation opportunity to the Climate Change Steering Group attention, and to the attention of those who may be watching the meeting, so they may respond if they wish to.
Thank you. I hope people do, but I would ask the steering group if you think we should be responding as a council. Just shout or nod.
Yes.
They do. Right. So before I ask for individual comments, and quite clearly we can't formulate a response to a consultation in a forum like this, but Councillor Coleman wanted to say something.
Oh, Charles, I was just going to suggest that maybe we vote on accepting Christina's comments or acknowledging Christina's comments as part of any response we make, either as a steering group or as a council.
I certainly think that's a good idea. Is everybody else in favour of doing that? Yeah, right. Thank you very much then. So is that item dealt with? Julie, have I gone wrong again? Ben wanted to say something. Are you agreeing, Ben? Or
it's never for me to agree or disagree, Councillor. Yes, just to let you know, obviously the council as a whole are doing a response to this consultation, and that's being coordinated by one of the officers in Joe's area, and that includes responses from planning, from neighbourhood services, etc. I think what will be important is that Christina's comments are then, if approved by the group, which they obviously have been, we will then feed them back in as part of the overall council response to make sure that the climate change steering group's views are heard along with everybody else's, if that's okay.
I think so, but they won't get lost, will they?
No, they won't get lost. It will be considered as part of the overall response. And of course, all of the departments have the environment strategy at their heart anyway. So it'll all be included.
Thank you. Polly, Councillor Gray.
Can I just say that I'm sorry that our walking and cycling champion, Richard Thomas, isn't here today. And I hope that he will be included in this, because I know we've worked very hard to come up with a plan on walking and cycling in Bexhill.
Yeah, so, as he's the lead councillor who's being liaised with by Stuart Ramsbottom, who's leading our response to the consultation on an officer level, is liaising very much so with Councillor Thomas to make sure that his input is included.
Brilliant, thank you, Ben.
Right, thank you very much. Anybody else? Right, sorry, Paul Osborne.
Thank you, Chair. I just sort of put my bit in. I have a slight concern over sort of the idea of segregated cycling. I know in cities there's probably a better thing, but in the countryside there's just too many roads. It's just not going to happen. I can leave here and I can go into the Romney Marsh, and I can not see a car for 40 minutes, so that suits me quite fine. But I could save the government millions in infrastructure charges sort of easily if they just change the rules on the way motorists drive and treat cyclists, to be honest. If there was a law in place that sort of stopped people doing a close pass or cutting you up or not looking, nearly flattening you, if that was an instant 6 points and a £200 fine, then life would be a whole lot easier. From a point of view of, I will sort of avoid school run times on my bike now because, young mums and parents picking their kids up from school, they got their precious kids strapped in the back of their car and they drive like lunatics. The amount of times I've been nearly flattened by you know, parents picking up kids from school and looking over their shoulder at them screaming and nearly flattening them is just bad news. The other thing, you know, something that sort of is annoying, if you, I usually just go where I like, and you know, if I want to turn left, I'll turn left, and I want to turn right, I'll turn right, and somehow I end up back at home. But yeah, if you go onto some of the sort of national cycle routes, the roads are absolutely diabolical, and you sort of go through this lane and you get to the end and you think, and there's a sign up saying I'm part of NC2 or something, and you think, look, that's like whole city through there, and the road surfaces, again, you know, they're the sort of the worst thing. And I've sort of moaned to Keith Glazier as well about road surfaces, because, you know, if you've got a 40mm hole in a car, and it's not a priority to be repaired. In a car, you just get a slight bump. If you're on a push bike, you can end up on your backside with a flat tyre. And also the sort of the little slits you get that open up. If you manage to get your wheel in one of those, you're in trouble. So you know, road surfaces could be repaired and could be maintained better, especially when you get a lot of the you know, you get a hole and you get the washout from the hole and you get the gravel and the grit. You need to ride round that, which then puts you out into the traffic more, and some bright spark trying to overtake you sort of 6 inches off the back wheel is not fun sometimes. So I have a camera now, which is, you know, I shouldn't have to have a camera to sort of try and protect myself. But I've got a couple of videos if anybody wanted to see them, which are quite frightening. But there you go.
Thank you. I would add that I think segregated space, the engineers would say, could only be done where road width permits, because there are rules about road width. So I think cycling on a quiet country lane probably isn't within the remit of segregation, but I'm not an engineer. Sue Burton.
Could somebody do it? I know, I can't do it. Ben needs to do it.
No, you're done.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Couple of points on Christina's comments that you may want to add to. I think you need to clarify that working journeys and cycling journeys overlap, and it depends where you start from, particularly if you've got a linear village, that there is an overlap between when you would want to cycle and when you would want to walk, and they come together. You mentioned the local access forum. That is a county-wide group, so it's very difficult for them to have impact on this sort of work in detail. They represent horse riders, off-roaders, etc. So it's a very wide remit and a small group. So I would suggest that you might like to think about having something that really flags up Rother and flags up active travel to take the place of guidance with what happens at East Sussex County Council. And my last thought was where they are looking to have more where the money is to be spent, which areas are to have the money spent. And I think if you go to smaller projects, then you can impact the lives of lots of people, but aren't necessarily on the coast, I would say. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Sue, and I'm sure those points will be taken on board, and I presume that your cycling group anyway will be responding to the consultation, which is good. Thank you. Anybody else? Right. In that case, I think we've got to the point where we can agree, we can thank Christina and agree that with Ben, because he's listening, that all those points and the additional ones can be added into our consultation response. Agreed? Right. Thumbs up all round. Splendid. So really we are now at item 6, which is the paperless pledge. Christina.
Thank you, Councillor Field. I just wanted to put forward to the Climate Change Steering Group that that the number of papers that are being printed for the purpose of this group meetings is limited and reduced to align with the environmental agenda and the commitments made. I have put a request to Democratic Services that they do not print any papers for me for the members' meetings. I understand there may be reasons why people need to print paper copies for health reasons, eyesight, but I just wanted to put it forward to the climate change steering group, whether that's something, a small contribution we could all make.
Well, I think it's a brilliant idea, but you've heard me about this many occasions. Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I quite like one of the things we were talking about way back when we first sort of begun this group, which is changing the in terms of papers for meetings, changing it from being a default to receive paper to a default not to receive paper, and so that councillors who want to have paper, or officers and such who want to have paper, need to request it, because obviously because of the Equalities Act and stuff, we need to make sure paper copies can be available where people need them. But I think to have that opt-in rather than opt-out would be a good way to, because I'm sure there's a lot of councillors who just haven't got round to asking for paperless, or just I'll do it, I quite like papers, I'll do it at some point in the future when I'm forced to. So if we change that round, I think that might go a long way.
Ben, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, I mean, is it worth officers taking this point away? I'll have a chat with Julie and Lisa Cooper, the Democratic Services Manager, and maybe it might be necessary for a recommendation up to Cabinet, or it might be something that we can just do to investigate what it takes to sort of eliminate all committee papers being printed with, unless by exception as requested.
I think that's been very helpful. I don't know if it needs a cabinet decision, but
it may not do. But it's without sort of looking into it right now, it might be something that we can just take away from this meeting and say, this is a clear steer from the environment, from the climate change steering group. What do we need to do to make that happen?
That'd be good, Ben. And can we have a report back? Because sometimes we have good ideas that get taken forward and then they seem to sink without trace. So it'd be quite handy if we could just know what's going to happen as a result of this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Although by the time the next meeting comes around, you may have already stopped receiving papers, so you never know.
Thank you. Right, I've got Councillor Oz. I've got Councillor Cortell, then Councillor Langlands. Paul.
I don't have anything to add other than being totally supportive of the proposal of having papers by default only, and I'd like to declare that with immediate effect I will ask Democratic Services not to send me any more papers.
Thank you. As by way of virtue signalling, I've not had papers for longer than I can remember. I'm very smug. Right, Councillor Langlands.
Yes, just a quick add to that. Would it be possible then to rethink how we do the meetings? Could we take that idea away and perhaps screen share recommendations or something? Just to sort of, if people haven't, I mean, I only have my iPad, so I am switching from screens like nobody's business. But if we could perhaps share recommendations on screens, get Democratic Services or someone at the meeting to do that, just so it sort of keep like we did today. Excellent. Just reminds you and helps you to sort of follow things through a little bit better. Just a thought as another idea.
I think that's a very good idea. I can only do this with 2 devices. Actually, I have the meeting itself on my personal one and the papers on my council one, and then I can do it without switching. Right. Dominic Manning.
Right. Yes, hello. I really just wanted to highlight that actually, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, is that digital information isn't zero carbon. Data centres, the biggest data centre is in Mongolia. Why? Because coal is cheap there. So whilst I totally support going paperless, I just think that council should be mindful of the fact that digital is not clean from a carbon perspective. I'm not suggesting any solutions to this in as much as I think the only way of getting around that is to make sure that eventually everywhere globally is run off renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, I think in the back of our minds, we all know that. But my belief is it's better to do it one way rather than two ways. However, that's just me. So, Christina, is there anything else you wanted to add to this? You haven't got a pledge for us all to sign or anything like that that we can stick up on the council chamber walls if we ever go back there?
No, Councillor Field, thank you.
Thank you. That brings us then to any other business. And Councillor Coleman, you had an item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just copy and paste. I've written down the text during the course of the meeting. I just had an idea whilst the sort of meeting was going ahead, in terms of sort of making sure, because obviously I know Christina's got a lot of work on, and all of our officers and staff have a lot of work on, especially with the pandemic, in terms of members' involvement and sort of perhaps members taking a more active role in sort of creating a culture of change in the council. And so it's probably best if I just read out what I've just typed there for the benefit of people listening, which is that members of the Climate Change Steering Group be assigned to each department within the council to monitor actions in relation to the environment strategy. This monitoring could include meeting with the appropriate cabinet lead, meeting with the relevant heads of service, observing related committee meetings, raising the environmental strategy during committee meetings, reporting back on Climate Change Steering Group, or reporting back to the Climate Change Steering Group on any progress or findings, and that the chair of the Climate Change Steering Group designates these monitoring roles in conversation with members, accounting for members' workload and availability. I think it'd be really good to have a little bit of member oversight from this committee, where each of us are posted to different areas of the council, to different committees, especially if we already sit on those committees anyway, and to make sure that things are going ahead. And it might save Christina and sort of the team a little bit of work there. Thank you.
I think that's a really interesting idea. Can I just start off by asking Ben what he thinks about it? Oh, Ben? Ben, are you there? Oh, I don't know. In that case, he's busy typing messages but not responding. Perhaps he's stunned. Christina, what do you think?
Yeah, as you say, Catherine Field, I think it's a really interesting idea.
Ben tells me his computer has stopped working properly, so that would account for the silence. Sue, ProCheck.
Just a comment, is that cabinet members have a huge amount to do as it is. I mean, already I obviously work with the waste contract, with things like the Delaware, I've got the parish and town councils. I mean, my list is quite long, but I'm happy to do what Sam's suggesting in the areas where I've got a portfolio responsibility. But I just wondered if we could get some backbenchers involved here.
Please. I think that's a really good way of involving people who aren't cabinet members, because, as you say, we have a lot to do. And Sam's proposal suggested that the members who did it in liaison with cabinet members, which by implication I thought meant it would be non-cabinet members doing this. And I just think it's really good. I'm a bit bothered about designating roles though, Sam. It's a bit controlling. I'd rather ask for volunteers and then get heavy-handed when...
yeah. Feel free to change the wording.
Okay. So are you members in agreement with that? Excellent. Oh, sorry, Malcolm wants to comment.
Thank you, Chairman. Only just a point of clarity, and Sam or Councillor Coleman can no doubt is that it talks about members of, well, you've now said backbenchers to be involved, assigned to each department, but then the actual monitoring includes committee meetings. Can I just be clear on what it is that is being monitored, so that well, A, I'm aware and I can make colleagues aware of that as well. So just a little clarity. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, if I may, Chair. I think, I mean, I was trying to sort of write it in a reasonably formal way. But I think in terms of, I know a lot of members already sit on various committees anyway, and making in terms of members committees and making sure that they are progressing with the climate change strategy and stuff, and also where we haven't got members of this committee on those committees, perhaps ensuring that one of us is in the meeting observing in some capacity. But obviously the meetings have a direct correlation with the sort of the departments within the council and the work that goes on there. So I thought, does that make sense?
Yeah. Can you then leave this with me to have a discussion with Ben and Malcolm? But Malcolm wants to come back. Malcolm.
No, Chairman, you took the words out of my mouth, so thank you.
And we'll try and see how we can take this forward in a non-controlling and non-interventionist kind of a way. But you know, light touch, I think, is the phrase. Okay. Anybody else got any other business?
I just have one, Catherine, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Is that East Sussex have got quite a strong youth council, and they have very strong views on the environment in particular. And I know Sam is the champion for young people, but it would be good to get young people involved here somehow. So maybe that's something else to think about. Yeah,
good idea. Maybe we could. They're very vocal and very strong, and they're really brilliant young people. So it might be interesting to have them along. I mean, they go to other county council meetings, like safeguarding boards and things. So that'd be have them along. Sam, do you know them personally?
I'm not confident that I know the East Sussex Youth Council. I do know the Bexhill Youth Council, which I set up just before the pandemic, and we were planning to have our first meeting on the environment strategy itself, and then obviously we all got home laden.
Or perhaps you can have that meeting feedback and we can work out how to integrate. Good idea, Sue. Anybody else? In that case, I shall close. Oh, Lynn.
It was just one quick question about the allocation of finances to the environment officer and strategy officer and things. I know we did that initial kick-off, but where are we going next year? What have we committed to that? Because it seems to me there's an awful lot of work to do, and there might need to be extra admin and extra things that need to be provided for. I would hate to think Christina is juggling 50 balls in the air and hasn't got the right support if we're committing to this.
Ben is back to answer your question, but it'd be a matter for the budget round, I'm sure, which, as you know, is coming up. Ben.
It is. I mean, this is a matter for the budget round. I was going to say that, but I mean, obviously, we do have an ongoing budget commitment in addition to obviously the resource that we have in Christina. We do have a small annual budget of about £40,000 that we can utilise towards consultancies or programs or commitments in whatever way is felt necessary towards to bring the program forward. I think if there are larger costs than that involved, then we'd be approaching cabinet for specific causes, and be creating a business case on that basis. Anyway, so we do have a small working budget. I know Christina's looking at trying to get in some additional help through sort of apprenticeship schemes and internship schemes that the government is running at the moment. To try and bring on board some additional resource and also at the same time give young people the opportunity to progress in life as well. So we look at it in all areas.
Thank you. Councillor Prochak.
Just a quick addition is at the East Sussex Strategic Partnership, Brighton University also offer free 30-day students for 30 days to work with us, so that might be also a way to go.
Thanks, Councillor. We'll look into that as well.
Right. Third time of asking. Everybody okay? Right. Thank you very much for your attendance, and thank you, Christina, for all the work you put into this meeting. It's been very interesting, I think, and thank you for the non-council members for coming. We haven't had a lot to say, but I think your input has been very helpful, and I hope you've gained something out of it and please feel free to remain in touch with us outside formal meetings. Okay, right. Thank you very much, everybody. And
Chairman, we've still got to discuss the next meeting date.
Oh, sorry.
So we're looking at April.
Yes.
So Easter week is
the first weekend, isn't it?
So that's sort of week commencing the 5th. I think that's Easter Monday. So looking at the diary at the moment, the 12th of April is clear. So I don't know if you wanted to go for something like 10 o'clock on that day or something.
That's fine by me.
Whether you wanted to do an afternoon one.
No, let's start the week bright and perky with the morning one.
So we'll go with 10 o'clock then on April the 12th.
Yes, please. No one's saying no, so right. I'm sorry, I forgot that again. What a shambles. Sorry, Julie. Have I really finished now?
Yes, you just need to officially close the meeting now.
I'd like then to officially close this meeting. Say thank you and goodbye. Bye.